reading. This is from the introduction, and then I'll do another reading in just a little bit. The placement of a 973,000 square foot plant in one of the poorest counties in North Carolina, and the ripple effect throughout every layer of life surrounding it, provides a window into meatpacking across the United States. It is a microcosm of fractured labor law and enforcement, where today in the United States, more than 20,000 workers each year, up from just 6,000 in the late 60s, suffer illegal retaliation for exercising their federal rights to negotiate the conditions of their workplace without fear of losing their jobs. Where 75% of companies involved in a union campaign hire anti-union consulting firms called union busters, a booming $4 billion industry. Where federal law enforcement of the NLRA is so weak and so slow, the corporations simply factor the small penalties into their cost of doing business at the expense of worker safety and wages. Where corporations can appeal federal judgments against them for breaking federal labor law, extending enforcement for years, sometimes more than 16 years, long after workers would want their jobs back, long after they found other work. To add insult to injury, any wages earned by workers who were fired during those years after those wages are deducted from the monetary penalties paid by the company that illegally fired them. So ironically, the federal government penalizes these illegally fired workers for bootstrapping and providing for their families, while the wheels of justice slowly grind up their idealistic belief in a land for, of, and by the people. It also represents the meatpacking industry's national trend to move slaughterhouses away from unionized cities into poor rural areas in right-to-work states that discourage unions, as well as the common practice of using massive profits to grease the wheels of Southern political will to take advantage of the poor. And it provides insights into how corporations have taken advantage of the influx of often undocumented workers, easily intimidated with threats of deportation, and pitted poor blacks against desperate immigrants to dilute worker solidarity, theoretically encouraged by national labor law. Smithfield Foods placed its mothership plant in southeastern North Carolina, where the company leveraged massive, well-oiled anti-union and marketing on disorganized workers, picking off pro-union leaders one by one and using them as examples of what would happen to other workers if they tried to organize or even spoke up in favor of unionization. This is, of course, illegal, but the loopholes under current weak and unenforced labor law make it possible for companies to get away with illegal firings, intimidation, and even assault with impunity for many years. When passed in 1935, the National Labor Relations Act directly addressed the inequity of bargaining power between employees and employers and contributed to the widely shared prosperity that prevailed after the Second World War. This reversed the inequalities that existed at the turn of the century during the Gilded Age. In 1915, 2% of the population owned 60% of the wealth. In America, the share of national income going to the top 1% has followed a great U-shaped arc. Before World War I, the 1% received about a fifth of total income in Britain and the United States. Today, the richest 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90%. Some directly blame labor law, in dire need of reform, for actually contributing to the demise of the unions it was enacted to protect. And some directly link the demise of the unions with the demise of the middle class. That the middle class has been hollowed out is not a coincidence, according to economist Paul Krugman, who writes that in 1970s corporate America, which had previously had a largely cooperative relationship with unions, in effect declared war on organized labor. So that's the big picture stuff. But that's not how journalists work. We don't say, wow,